Hello, everyone, and welcome again to another Teacher Joseph podcast. Today's topic is motivation, because many of you are telling me that you find it very hard to be motivated. You find it very hard to channel your energy into something like learning English. Motivation is always there, but often we don't use it properly. If you get up in the morning and smoke a cigarette instead of studying, motivation is there, just not to learn English. And that's something which often comes up in conversations I'm having in classes right now. How do we channel our energy into learning? Well, let me give you a few very surprising examples of how people use English these days, just to see if you can relate to any of these. So I had a student a few days ago, and he told me how great life is. He's building an apartment, he's renovating his house, he's obviously very motivated to be doing these things, but he doesn't always come to his English lessons. It seems that other things take priority. I have another student who cancelled the last two lessons. He told me that he was at music concerts, he's been traveling, and meanwhile, I'm waiting on Skype for him, and he's not there. And in both of those cases, English clearly isn't a priority for these people. A third person I met recently told me that she just isn't motivated. So she doesn't want to do any homework. She doesn't want to look at English other than simply passive learning. So a lesson with me is all she can manage in the space of 1 or 2 weeks because she has a young child. Does that sound like you? Does that sound like the kind of thing that happens for you? Because if it is, then I would really ask the question, how important is English for me? Because if building apartments, renovating apartments, and doing projects and whatever is bringing you joy, then clearly English isn't. Because if English was making you as happy as those things, then of course you would be learning English, or you would have space for your English. So I think the first thing to look at if you're having issues with motivation is your joy level. How joyful do you become at studying? And that's a really important question, because if you're coming to me for lessons, don't waste my time, okay? Come, be ready, be happy. If you're not, then there is no point. Because some people, I think, they expect English to magically happen in the background while they're doing other things. And to a point, it does if you let it. But if you're perhaps too excited in other projects, which may be more important because it's for family or for money, then you really need to look at your joy level there to ask yourself, well, is this really the right time for me to be learning English? Is it right that the teacher's waiting for me on Skype and at the last minute I'm expecting him to be okay with a reschedule? It's just something for you to consider and to think about, because for motivation to happen or for it to appear to learn English, you need to allow it. And filling your life with many other things often is detrimental to the learning process. Let me just explain to you how learning works. It's like everything else in life, okay? If you're looking for a new boyfriend, a girlfriend, you need to make space. If you just carry on working 12 hours a day, your partner isn't just going to appear in the workplace and say, hi, let's have a relationship. You need to make space in your life for that to happen. That might mean going out more. It might be socializing more, joining groups or clubs where you're likely to meet people. It might even mean clearing out a space in your life where that person is going to be. For example, if you're always free in the mornings, that's a really nice time to do that, to get yourself ready to meet someone. Empty a cupboard in your house, leave it empty so that when the person does eventually come to you or meet with you, there's a place for him to leave his things, to leave his bags or his clothes or whatever. So you kind of make this preparatory stage before the thing happens. You open your mind to it and you open your life to it. English is the very same. Many of us try to fit English in around our other things because, after all, it is only English and it's only online. So what does it matter if I miss a class or two? Well, it matters a lot because it shows, first of all, that you're really not ready or you haven't made that space in your life for English to happen. And that isn't really very nice, especially when you're booking lessons with teachers who are waiting for you. And then there's the other thing of, wow, my work is so busy. I was called into a meeting by my boss, so I couldn't come to the lesson, and I couldn't do my homework because I've been doing other projects. And this is something else which comes up. I was talking to a woman the other day, and she said, I'm changing my jobs. I've just been so busy doing the handover to my new colleague that I couldn't do homework. But then she said, well, because I'm leaving my job, actually, in the morning times, I have nothing to do. So I'm at work and I can't do anything because they won't give me new projects because I'm leaving. And I'm thinking, well, which is it? You're too busy doing your handover or you're too busy doing nothing. And so often we use our time as an excuse to be busy. And I think, if I'm really honest, all of us these days, we have this kind of existential void, this emptiness inside. And many of us work to cover that existential void, or we simply push other things in order to feel excited, to feel like we're doing something. If you could channel that energy into English, you probably would find that you learn much quicker. But because English isn't often associated with success, then it tends to get put further down the priority. So, for example, if you're building a new apartment or doing something like this for other people to see, that's much more important because that's an outward status symbol which the world can celebrate with you. Whereas English, well, until it's perfect, you might not even want to tell people that you're learning. Let me just give you some ideas about improving your motivation. So one of them is definitely getting excited. Check your joy level regularly because if English isn't bringing you joy, I would say you really need to look at that because it'll just slip further and further down the list. The English teacher is the one who suffers because you don't start always coming to classes. You might not be studying enough. These kind of things. So your joy level is definitely up there. To track your processes and your successes is also very important. Just as you would with any project in giving your manager updates, have an Excel spreadsheet ready about the things that you're covering and the things that you remember. Because in those moments when the voices come that say, I'm not getting anywhere, you have a clear indication, a clear measurement of what you've achieved. If you're doing voice work, you can easily do that by recording your voice. If you don't like recording your voice, then you can simply store those recordings and share them with a teacher, and the teacher can tell you how much you've changed. Ask for feedback Ask teachers directly for feedback after each lesson if it's not offered to you. Feedback for one-to-one lessons can be a little bit difficult, but if a teacher knows you well enough, then he's able to see your progress over 3 or 4 lessons. So even if you have a bad day once, he's able to see what you can do, even if you're not doing it at that particular moment. Self-reflection is also really important. So just to reflect on why you're learning, where it is as a priority in your life, and obviously checking your Excel spreadsheet, your measurements to make sure that things are going well is also very important. If you have any kind of doubt or bad feeling, talk about it. Talk it out with your teacher, because we all have those moments when learning second languages. Part of the problem is these days we learn alone. We don't learn with people. And this is a big problem, because when you're alone, often you're living or working in a mental atmosphere that's not ideal for learning. Okay, so first of all, if you live alone, the idea that you'll go home and study a book every day for an hour when really you're yearning for company, or going to the pub if you're living alone, that's not going to happen. Unless you're a very determined person, that kind of thing is very, very difficult. Talking to a language partner, preferably face-to-face, or joining a language club or group can be very affirming. That's very, very good and allows students to work together. But another idea about mental atmospheres is to try to seek the support of those around you. Now, this can be very difficult, although in theory, when you're married and you have a family, your family should be supportive of you and the choices you make. But from my experience as a teacher, people who come from backgrounds where academia is not celebrated, families can actually become very suspicious of your learning, and they can do things to try to knock you back. Oh, no point in you learning English. You can't even work at our local factory, for example. So why would you want to study this? And this is something that I faced growing up. My family were really, really not supportive of me becoming a teacher. They just couldn't deal with things like that, positions of authority. So there was an opinion that, I would go and work at the local factory, get the girl next door pregnant, and live happily ever after in the same street as my parents. And that really wasn't going to happen. So yeah, I can fully relate to people who are in that kind of situation. And it takes a long time to be able to trust yourself and to trust the options that are open to you. And it begins with surrounding yourself with good people who can encourage you. And that can be hard if you come from a very deprived community. Everyone thinks here in the UK that we're all quite educated, academic, and affirming. I can assure you that really isn't the case. The older people especially came from non-academic backgrounds, and they tend not to see what they could do, they tend to see what they haven't done, and they don't really want to change. This is a small town syndrome, and we are on an island after all, in the UK, so these kind of attitudes are very prevalent outside of cities. Let me just continue a little bit. If you get into this idea of giving feedback and offering others chances to improve, you'll begin to see others doing the same with you. So in a language exchange process, you can easily give people feedback on what they're doing, and it allows you the chance to grow, because they'll be doing the same with you. And of course, lastly, to make goals. Now, this is a difficult one if you're learning a language alone. But even simple goals like meet my language exchange partner once a week is a very simple place to start. Ensure that I learn 2 new words a day. I mean, they can't get much simpler than that. Read one line of the newspaper every day, or if you're religious, choose something which motivates you or is good for your soul. But you really need to be setting some goals. Nothing major, okay, but just enough to kind of get you started. So I would try to stay away from goals like complete 3 pages of this book by the end of the week. I mean, in a busy family and uh, working atmosphere, that's not going to happen. So it's just something for you to keep in your mind there. Okay. So yeah, I hope you found this helpful, and there's a few ideas there to get you motivated. It's not impossible. It's just about channeling your energy. Maybe take a few days away from English just to set these things correctly. Part of the problem is we are often haunted by the way we had to learn as children, where we were given books, told to read them, and then punished for not doing it properly. Those days have gone. So there's many other ways to make your learning an enjoyable experience. Just sit back, relax, and if you really, really don't want to do it, and your joy level is telling you, you know what, this isn't for me, it doesn't mean you have to quit. It just means that you have to find a different way of doing it. Maybe meet somebody that you're comfortable with. All right. Okay, that's it. I hope you found this helpful. Let's talk soon. See you. Bye.